On September 1, 1939, German troops tore through the Polish border under the cover of darkness. 2 days later, Britain and France declared war, escalating a regional invasion into a global conflict. The conventional historical record holds Adolf Hitler and his National Socialist ideology responsible for this expansion. Yet this was a nation that, only a decade prior, was bankrupt and militarily hollow. To understand the start of the war, we have to ask why the international community allowed that transition to occur. The answer lies 20 years in the past, in the Hall of Mirrors at Versailles, where the conditions for the 1939 invasion were first established. In 1919, the Allied powers signed the Treaty of Versailles. Driven by a need for security and financial restitution, France insisted on terms that were deeply punitive toward the defeated German Empire. Germany lost significant territory, saw its military strictly capped, and was saddled with reparations that far exceeded its ability to pay. To meet debts, the Weimar Republic printed massive quantities of currency. The resulting hyperinflation made German marks so worthless it were swept into gutters. The situation worsened in 1929. This graph shows the fragile recovery of the late 20s wiped out as the Great Depression hit Germany. As industrial production fell by half, the unemployment rate moved in the opposite direction, leaving 6 million people without income. Protracted economic misery often pushes a population toward political extremes. In Germany, the collapse of the center-left and center-right parties cleared a path for authoritarianism. In Italy, Benito Mussolini had already established a fascist dictatorship by 1922, providing a model for total state control. Hitler utilized this model, focusing on the resentment toward Versailles and the misery of the Depression. He promised jobs, national dignity, and the acquisition of living space in the East. The League of Nations was tasked with preventing this type of aggressive expansion. It was the international body meant to uphold the rule of law. However, the League lacked a unified military force to enforce its decisions, and major powers, including the United States, never joined. Its condemnations carried no actual weight. The inability of international institutions to punish early acts of aggression, like the invasion of Ethiopia, signaled to these regimes that their expansionist goals would face little resistance. As Hitler began seizing neighboring territories, Britain and France remained cautious. The memories of the First World War made the prospect of another European conflict unthinkable. This led to appeasement. In 1938, Allies allowed Germany to annex Czechoslovakia, hoping to maintain peace. But even Hitler's ideological rivals were making deals. This line shows Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union agreeing to divide Eastern Europe just weeks before the war. These concessions did not satisfy the Nazi regime. They validated its aggression. By 1939, Hitler was convinced that the international community would not intervene to save Poland. On September 1, 1939, that conviction led to action. Hitler moved his forces into Poland, finally crossing the line that Britain and France could no longer ignore. The human cost of this conflict was staggering. Out of 80 million total deaths, civilian casualties accounted for 60 million, 3 times the number of military losses. By 1945, the physical infrastructure of Europe had been destroyed. This image captures the state of the continent, wreckage set against a landscape of leveled cities. While the invasion of Poland was the immediate cause of the war, it was the culmination of 2 decades of systemic failure. The harsh peace of 1919, the global economic ruin of 1929, and repeated concessions in the 1930s created the conditions that made the conflict possible.